He didn't ask for help. That was the thing nobody understood later, when everyone wanted to make it into something bigger than it was. He didn't ask. He just sat there on the plastic chair outside the pharmacy, holding a folded piece of paper in both hands like it might blow away, and the whole world walked past him like he was part of the furniture. Lenora Bridwell almost walked past him, too. She was running late. She had a 2:15 conference call she'd already rescheduled twice, a parking validation that was about to expire, and a dry cleaning pickup she'd forgotten about 3 days in a row. She had her phone in one hand and her keys in the other, and she was moving the way people move when they've decided that whatever is happening around them is someone else's problem. Then the old man looked up. He didn't say anything. He just looked up, the way a person looks up when they've been waiting so long they've almost stopped expecting anyone to notice. His eyes were light brown, nearly amber, and they were completely calm. Not the calm of a man at peace, the calm of a man who had been frightened for a long time and had run out of the energy to show it. Lenora stopped. She didn't decide to stop. Her feet just stopped moving, the way they sometimes do when your body knows something your mind is still arguing about. "Sir," she said, "are you all right?" He looked at her for a moment. Then he looked back down at the paper in his hands. "I'm trying to find my son," he said. "I wrote down his address. I can't remember where I put my phone." His name was August Pembroke. He was 81 years old, and he had driven himself to the pharmacy that morning to pick up a prescription for blood pressure medication, which his doctor had called in 3 days ago. Somewhere between the parking lot and the pharmacy counter, he had become confused. He'd gotten his prescription. He'd paid for it. And then he had sat down in the plastic chair by the door to rest for just a minute, and the minute had stretched into something he could no longer measure. Lenora learned all of this slowly, the way you learn things from someone who is choosing their words carefully, because they don't want you to think less of them. She crouched down so she wasn't standing over him. That mattered, she realized. When you stand over a person who is already feeling small, you make them smaller. "Do you know your son's name?" she asked. "Of course I know my son's name," he said, with a flash of something sharp in his voice. Then quieter, "Philip. Philip Pembroke. He's a dentist. Has his own practice over on Meridian. That's good. That's helpful. Do you remember if your phone might be in your car?" August looked at the piece of paper. He turned it over. It was a receipt from the pharmacy. He'd written a phone number on the back in the careful, deliberate handwriting of a man who didn't trust himself to remember things anymore. "I don't know where I parked," he said. He didn't say it with shame. He said it the way a person states a fact they have accepted, but not forgiven themselves for. Lenora sat down next to him. Not beside him, exactly. There wasn't another chair. She just lowered herself onto the edge of a display shelf nearby and set her keys down and stopped pretending she was going anywhere. "Okay," she said. "Let's figure it out together." Lenora Bridwell was 54 years old. She was the director of community development for a mid-sized nonprofit that worked on housing equity in the greater Indianapolis area. And she was the kind of person whose name appeared on programs for fundraising galas, and whose face appeared in the annual report, but who would have been deeply uncomfortable if you called her important. She wore sensible blazers and kept her natural hair in a low twist and drove a 7-year-old Volvo she had no intention of replacing. She had 2 adult children, a mortgage she'd finally almost paid off, and a habit of getting to the end of a day and wondering if she'd actually done anything that mattered. She did not think about any of this while she sat with August Pembroke outside the pharmacy. She thought about the piece of paper with the phone number on it, and whether the number might still work, and whether August might have a wallet with some kind of emergency contact inside. He did, a laminated card tucked behind his library card with his son's name and number and a note in smaller print. "In case of emergency, please call Philip." Dad gets confused sometimes. August didn't know the card was there. When Lenora found it and showed it to him, he went very quiet. He looked at it for a long time. "My wife put that in there," he said finally. "Dolores. She passed in February." Lenora didn't say she was sorry because it felt too small. She just let it sit there between them, which sometimes is the only thing you can do. Then she called Philip. The phone rang 4 times before he picked up, and when he did, his voice was tight with the particular strain of someone who has been waiting for a call like this for longer than they want to admit. Dad? Dad? Who is this? My name is Lenora Bridwell. Your father is with me at the CVS on Allisonville Road. He's safe. He has his medication. He just needs a ride home. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, long enough that she heard Philip exhale slowly and press his hand over the phone, and she knew without being told that he was trying not to cry. I'll be there in 15 minutes, he said. Take your time. We'll be here. She didn't actually have time. She had the conference call and the parking validation and 3 unread messages from her deputy director about a zoning meeting that kept moving around on the calendar. But she sat with August Pembroke and she asked him about Dolores, and he told her about a woman who had taught 4th grade for 31 years and made the best sweet potato pie in the state of Indiana and had a laugh that could fill up an entire room. He told her about the trip they'd taken to Portugal for their 50th anniversary, which Dolores had planned for 2 years and which he had complained about right up until the moment they arrived. He told her that he still made coffee for 2 every morning before he remembered. By the time Philip arrived, Lenora had heard enough about Dolores Pembroke that she felt like she knew her. Philip was 52, a few years younger than Lenora, with close-cropped hair, going gray at the temples, and the slightly dazed expression of a man, juggling more than he'd told anyone. He came through the pharmacy door, still in his scrubs, a white coat half tucked under his arm, and when he saw his father sitting in the plastic chair, he stopped walking for just a second. Hey, Dad, you didn't need to come, August said. I was managing. I know you were. Philip looked at Lenora over his father's head. Thank you, he said quietly. Thank you for staying with him. He was good company, she said, and she meant it. She thought that was the end of it. That's important to understand. Lenora was not doing any of this because she expected anything in return. She was doing it because the alternative, walking past a confused elderly man and telling herself he was someone else's responsibility, was something she had decided a long time ago that she would not be. She went home that evening, had the conference call from her kitchen table, and forgot to pick up the dry cleaning again. 3 days later, her office phone rang. Mrs. Bridwell? This is Philip Pembroke. I got your number from the pharmacy. I hope that's all right. You left your business card with the technician. She had, actually, in case there was paperwork or in case anyone had questions. It was a habit. Of course, she said. How is your father? He's okay. We're figuring some things out. A pause. I was calling because I wanted to thank you properly. And because my father has been asking about you. He wants to know if you'd be willing to come to dinner. He says he didn't get to finish telling you about Portugal. Lenora laughed. She couldn't help it. Tell him I'd like that very much, she said. She went to dinner the following Saturday. Philip lived in a pale yellow colonial on the north side of the city, the kind of house that had a garden because someone actually spent time in it, not because a landscaper came twice a month. August was installed in the front parlor when she arrived, wearing a collared shirt and a cardigan and an expression that suggested he had been ready for at least an hour. There was also a woman at the kitchen table who was introduced as Philip's wife, Sandra, and who shook Lenora's hand with a firmness that communicated a great deal without saying anything. Sandra was an occupational therapist. She had the careful, measured warmth of someone who had learned not to get attached too quickly and had mostly succeeded. Dinner was roasted chicken and green beans, and the conversation moved easily, the way it does when people have already decided to like each other. Lenora learned that Philip had 2 daughters in college, that August had grown up in Memphis and moved north in his 30s for work, that the garden had been Dolores's project, and that keeping it up was Philip's way of not letting it go. After dinner, when Sandra was cleaning up and Philip had stepped away to take a call, August looked at Lenora across the table and said, "Can I tell you something?" "Of course," she said. "I knew you were going to stop." He said it very simply, like he was reporting a fact. "I saw you coming down the sidewalk and I thought, that one, she's going to stop." Lenora looked at him. "How did you know?" You slowed down first, he said. Before you even saw me clearly, you slowed down. Most people speed up when they see something they don't want to deal with. You slowed down. She didn't have anything to say to that, so she just nodded. Dolores was like that, he said. She always slowed down first. This is the part of the story where things got complicated. And here's what you need to understand. Complicated doesn't mean bad. It just means that kindness rarely moves in a straight line. 3 weeks after that dinner, Lenora got a call from a number she didn't recognize. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Marvella Stokes, and she said she was the director of a company called Pembroke Home Care Services. Lenora didn't immediately connect the name. My brother is August Pembroke, Marvella said. Lenora had not known August had a sister. He'd mentioned a brother who had died some years back, but not a sister. He's told me about you, Marvella continued, several times. I wanted to reach out because we've been having some trouble with our father's care situation, and Philip suggested I call you. I'm not a care coordinator, Lenora said. I work in housing equity. I know what you do, Marvella said. That's actually why Philip thought you might be able to help. We're dealing with something that isn't a medical issue. It's a financial one, and it's a housing one. And frankly, it's a legal one, and I don't know which end to start from. What Marvella explained over the next 20 minutes was this. August owned a house. Not the house Philip lived in. A different house. A smaller one on the east side of the city, where August and Dolores had lived for 38 years before they moved into Philip's place. The plan had always been to sell it eventually, but they'd kept it, and Dolores had kept meaning to sort out the paperwork, and then Dolores had gotten sick, and then she had passed, and now there was a situation. A woman named Kendra Hargrove had approached August 4 months ago. She was young, personable, and she presented herself as a property consultant. She had helped him fill out some paperwork. He wasn't entirely sure what paperwork, and she had told him she was going to help him protect the property from taxes. August had signed things. He was not certain what he had signed. Last week, Marvella had discovered that the deed to the house had been transferred, not sold. Transferred. August Pembroke's name was no longer on it. Kendra Hargrove's LLC was. He didn't know, Marvella said. Her voice was steady, but only barely. He genuinely didn't know. He thought he was signing tax documents. Lenora set down her pen. She'd been taking notes without thinking about it. How long ago did this happen? The transfer was filed 8 weeks ago. We found out last week. Is Philip aware? Philip found out the same time I did. He wanted to go straight to the police. I convinced him to wait. I wanted to. I don't know. I wanted to understand it first. Before it became something with lawyers and depositions, and my father sitting in a waiting room somewhere being asked to explain what he signed. Lenora understood that. She understood it exactly. Give me a few days, she said. She was not a lawyer. She knew enough to know that, and she knew enough to know who was. She called a colleague named Fatima O.C. Chambers, who worked with a legal aid organization that handled elder financial abuse cases, and Fatima listened to the whole story without interrupting, and then said, How old is he? 81. Documented cognitive decline. His family says mild. He's been formally assessed once, about a year ago. Early stages, and the transfer was filed when he was already showing symptoms? Yes. Okay. Fatima's voice had shifted into something focused and operational. This is actually more common than people realize, and there's more legal recourse than most families know. The key is going to be the timing of the assessment relative to the signing. If we can establish that he lacked capacity at the time of signing, the transfer may be voidable. I'll need to see the documents. I can get them, Lenora. Fatima paused. How did you get involved in this? I sat with an old man outside a pharmacy, Lenora said. He reminded me of someone. There was a beat of silence. Who? She thought about it. Me, she said. He reminded me of what I hope someone does for me someday. The next 6 weeks were not simple. Nothing about untangling elder financial fraud is simple. It moves slowly, through records requests and affidavits and conversations with people who want to be helpful but need 3 forms of documentation before they can confirm their own names. Lenora spent hours on the phone. She forwarded documents to Fatima, and tracked down the original notary, and spent a genuinely unpleasant afternoon going through the LLC registration filings for Kendra Hargrove's company, which had been incorporated 11 months ago and had 4 other property transfers attached to it, 4 other families. When she told Philip, he sat down heavily in his office chair and put his hands over his face. "This is what she does," he said. "She finds people like my dad, and this is just what she does." "Yes," Lenora said, "which is why we're not going to let her keep doing it." She worked with Fatima to file a complaint with the State Attorney General's office. She helped Marvella connect with 2 of the other affected families who had not yet realized what had happened to them. She spent a Saturday afternoon at August's kitchen table, walking him through the documents carefully, without making him feel stupid. Because he wasn't stupid. He was an 81-year-old man who had trusted someone he should not have trusted, and that was something that could happen to almost anyone. August listened. He asked clear questions. He signed where Fatima told him to sign. At the end of it, he looked at Lenora and said, "She seemed very professional." "She was counting on that," Lenora said. "I should have called Philip." "You didn't know there was a reason to." He looked out the window at the garden, which Philip had kept going through the whole of it, because some things you keep doing because stopping feels too much like giving up. "Dolores would have known something was wrong," he said. "She always knew. You know now," Lenora said. "That's what matters." The Attorney General's office opened a formal investigation in October. Kendra Hargrove's LLC was frozen pending the investigation. 3 of the 5 property transfers, including August's, were ultimately voided by a court order the following spring on the grounds of undue influence and lack of capacity, the kind of legal language that doesn't capture the human reality of what it feels like to learn that someone looked at your father's confusion and saw an opportunity. But that's the law for you. It deals in facts. The human part is something else. At the end of it all, Philip called Lenora to tell her about the court order. He called her on a Thursday evening, and she was in her car in the parking lot of a grocery store, and when he finished telling her, she sat there for a moment in the quiet. "The house is back," Philip said. "Dad's name is back on the deed. I don't know how to thank you. You already have," she said. "Several times, Lenora." His voice caught slightly. "You didn't have to do any of this. You stopped to check on an old man outside a pharmacy. That was the beginning and end of your obligation." "I know," she said. "So why? Because he slowed down first," she said. Philip didn't understand the reference, and she didn't explain it. Some things you carry with you, not because they're dramatic, but because they're true. She picked up milk and a rotisserie chicken and drove home through the early evening, past neighborhoods where people were turning on their porch lights and letting dogs out into yards and doing all the ordinary things that ordinary days are made of. She thought about August telling her that Dolores always knew. She thought about what it meant to slow down before you'd even decided to stop. She thought about the laminated card in August's wallet that Dolores had put there because she knew someday he was going to need someone to find it. Dolores Pembroke had made arrangements she would never see fulfilled, for a kindness she would never be around to witness, from a stranger she would never meet, and somehow, without knowing it, Lenora Bridwell had been that arrangement all along.